Welcome back. We're so thrilled you could join us today for a completely different kind of deep dive.
Totally different.
Yeah. Normally on this show, we're tackling these massive, sprawling subjects together. We take giant stacks of books or, comprehensive research papers.
Months of investigative journalism.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we distill all of that down for you. But today, we're going on a much more targeted mission. We are taking a microscope to a very brief, incredibly specific piece of source material.
It's a refreshing pivot for us. Instead of a mountain of data, we are looking at a single Wikipedia page.
Right. And not just any Wikipedia page. We're diving into the entry for a 2003 indie film called Nosy Parker.
Nosy Parker.
Now, this isn't some sprawling blockbuster with a massive digital footprint or endless behind-the-scenes documentaries. It is a tiny, oddly fascinating Wikipedia stub.
A digital artifact, really.
Yes. It's essentially a digital artifact at this point. But what's wild is that it's filled with these quirky plot details, strange metacasting choices, and this lingering, almost desperate plea for citations.
It's amazing how much is packed in there.
It really is. Within these few short paragraphs is a densely packed human drama that we're going to unravel for you today.
It's a great exercise in reading between the lines. The amount of psychological depth, thematic tension, and even meta-narrative complexity hiding within just a few sentences of a plot summary is pretty remarkable. It just goes to show you don't need a 500-page novel to capture the bizarre contradictions of human behavior. Sometimes a dry encyclopedic summary does the trick perfectly.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
If you pull up this Wikipedia article, the very first thing you see before you even get to the film itself is the disambiguation note at the top of the page.
Right, the classic Wikipedia "did you mean" section.
Exactly. And it instantly sets the thematic table for the entire movie. The page reminds us that the phrase Nosy Parker generally refers to a person who meddles in the affairs of others.
A meddler.
Yeah. But it also gives us a couple of interesting historical and fictional ties.
It grounds the phrase for the reader.
It notes that there's an Archbishop of Canterbury with that actual nickname, Matthew Parker.
Which is such a weird historical footnote.
Totally. And then there's a fictional character named Lucius Parker who also goes by the nickname Nosy. But you have to wonder, why would a movie about a rural Vermont tax assessor lean so hard into this specific British idiom for a meddler?
What's fascinating here is how the film's title leans entirely on this established cultural archetype. A nosy Parker isn't just someone who happens to be curious.
Right.
The phrase implies a very specific kind of intrusion. It's someone who crosses a boundary, someone who inserts themselves into the private domestic sphere of someone else's life without necessarily being invited.
Like they're poking around where they don't belong.
Exactly. And when you look at the plot of the film we're analyzing today, that concept of the meddler is literally institutionalized in the form of a rural tax assessor.
It's the perfect modern embodiment of the historical Nosy Parker. I mean, put yourself in the shoes of the characters in the film for a second. You've just moved to the country to escape to a private sanctuary, to be left alone.
You want isolation.
Right. Isolation. And suddenly, an agent of the state shows up with a clipboard. They are, quite literally, legally mandated to snoop around your property.
To count your bathrooms.
To count your bathrooms. To measure the square footage of your personal life.
Precisely. The tax assessor is the ultimate state-sanctioned Nosy Parker. They have to assess the literal value of your domestic world.
Which creates friction.
Unavoidable friction.
Yeah.
By using that specific phrase for the title, the source material suggests that director John O'Brien is signaling to the audience right away that this is a story about boundaries being crossed. It's about outsiders looking in and the tension between the public assessment of our lives and the private realities we try to keep hidden behind closed doors.
Which brings us perfectly to the private reality of the couple at the center of this story. Let's look at the setup the Wikipedia plot summary gives us.
The Newmans.
Yes, we have Natalie and Richard Newman. They are completely sick of suburbia. So they do what so many disillusioned suburbanites dream of doing. They pack up and move to rural Vermont.
And the source material specifically notes they are expecting this, quote, unspoiled setting, end quote, and intrinsic values to rejuvenate their marriage.
Which is such a loaded premise when you think about it.
Oh, heavily loaded.
They aren't just moving for a change of scenery or some fresh air. They are expecting the geography itself, the unspoiled setting of Vermont, to somehow fix their internal relationship issues.
Right.
It's like they're outsourcing their marital therapy to a zip code.
It's the classic geographic cure. You see this constantly in narratives about urban or suburban burnout. People project their need for authenticity onto a rural landscape.
They think the trees will save them.
Exactly. They believe that by surrounding themselves with the intrinsic values of Vermont, they'll magically absorb those values into their fractured dynamic. But, as the plot summary immediately reveals, their problems are much deeper than their current mailing address.
You can't just move away from a fundamental incompatibility.
You really can't.
Here's where it gets really interesting. The plot summary lays out the core conflict of the film in a single, pretty brutal sentence. Natalie wants to start a family. Richard, who already has grown children from a first marriage, does not.
It's a massive fundamental wedge between them. This isn't a disagreement about wallpaper or where to go on vacation. This is a totally incompatible vision for their future.
A deal breaker.
A total deal breaker. You have the generational gap, the baggage of Richard's previous life, and Natalie's unfulfilled desire to create a new life. It's the kind of conflict that usually ends a marriage right then and there.
Right. So how do they resolve it? How do you even bridge the gap between I want a baby and I'm done raising kids?
It seems impossible.
According to the Wikipedia page, their solution to this fundamental incompatibility is, and I'm quoting directly here, as a compromise, they build a trophy house.
It is a stunning psychological substitution to see summarized so casually in an encyclopedia.
It's wild.
You want a living, breathing family to nurture and grow, and I want to coast into my twilight years without raising another child. Let's compromise by building a massive, inanimate monument to our wealth.
It's such a specific narrative choice. The phrasing Wikipedia uses is so telling. It's not just a home, it's not a cozy cabin in the woods to match those intrinsic values they were supposedly looking for.
No, it's a trophy.
A trophy house, a prize that you put on a shelf to show other people how successful you are. But do you think Richard actually thought a house would solve the baby issue, or was it just a distraction technique?
When you look at the psychology behind this specific plot point, it really points to the latter. It tells you everything you need to know about the emptiness of their relationship. What does it actually mean to substitute a child with a house? Think about what those two things represent. A child represents the future, vulnerability, and unpredictable, messy growth.
And a house.
A trophy house represents absolute control, status, and static permanence. They are actively trying to build a Band-Aid for their marriage out of drywall and expensive fixtures.
It's the ultimate avoidance strategy. If you're busy arguing over imported Italian marble for the countertops, you don't have to talk about the fact that one of you is fundamentally unhappy.
Exactly.
But of course, the plot summary points out that building a dream house is a universally doomed endeavor when it's built on such a fractured foundation. The bigger the house, the bigger the cracks show.
Because the act of building the house forces them to interact with the real world they are trying to hide from.
Right.
The Wikipedia text explicitly states that the construction of this dream house inevitably leads to a visit from the local tax assessor. The larger and more ostentatious the trophy you build, the more attention you naturally draw to yourself.
You can't hide a mansion.
You can't build a monument in a rural town and expect the town to just ignore it.
And in Vermont, as this Wikipedia article helpfully points out, the local tax assessor goes by a very specific, almost quaint title, a lister.
A lister.
Which brings us to the catalyst of the entire drama. Building this enormous monument to their marital compromise brings the government right to their front door. Enter George Lyford.
George Lyford is described in the text as a lister and a farmer. This dual occupation is incredibly significant to the themes of the film.
Why does that matter so much? Just because he's not some suit from the city.
Exactly. He isn't just an anonymous bureaucrat coming from the state capitol with a briefcase. He works the land. He is a farmer. He represents the actual community.
Okay, that makes sense.
Over the course of 2 inspections, and the summary notes it's just 2 of flirtation sparks between George and Natalie. He comes to assess the financial value of the trophy house and ends up uncovering something entirely different about the emotional value of the people living inside it.
If you're Natalie in this situation, you move to Vermont looking for these elusive intrinsic values. Her husband, Richard, clearly doesn't embody those things.
Not at all.
Richard is the guy building a superficial trophy to avoid having a kid. But George literally represents the local land.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, you have to look at what George represents to her. He is the authentic rural experience she was searching for. He is the intrinsic value personified.
And the climax of this Wikipedia plot summary, the punchline of the whole synopsis, is delivered with such dry wit. It simply says that this flirtation results in George becoming Natalie's handyman.
It's such a great narrative irony embedded right there in the text.
Handyman. It's so perfect.
The bureaucrat who came to assess the property becomes the handyman to fix what is broken, but he isn't there to fix the plumbing in the trophy house. He's stepping in to fix the void in Natalie's life.
Wow.
The man who came to look closely at the facade they built ends up dismantling it from the inside.
He starts out as the nosy Parker, legally mandated to poke around the edges of their property, and ends up fully integrated into their domestic sphere.
The ultimate insider.
It's wild how much narrative tension is packed into that one word, handyman. But as much as we're enjoying dissecting this plot, we have to shift gears and talk about the cast list provided in this article.
Yes, the cast list.
Because this is where the source material goes from being a quirky indie film summary to a full-on, mind-bending meta-narrative.
The Wikipedia page gives us an incredibly short cast list. Just 3 names are highlighted.
Right. And those 3 names blur the lines between fiction and reality in a way that's genuinely surprising to see laid out in simple bullet points. Here's the list. Natalie Pico plays Natalie Newman. Richard Snee plays Richard Newman.
So right away, the director, John O'Brien, has cast actors who share the exact first names of the characters they're playing.
Which is already an interesting choice.
That alone creates a sense of documentary-style realism. It strips away a layer of artificiality, making you wonder how much of the actors' real personas are bleeding into these roles.
But wait, the third name on the list is where it goes completely off the rails. The third name is George Lyford. And who does George Lyford play? George Lyford plays George Lyford.
It's a fascinating artistic choice. O'Brien didn't just blur the lines, he erased them entirely with that casting.
He just grabbed a guy.
You have a film exploring the tension between superficial suburbanites seeking authenticity and the actual authentic rural landscape they intrude upon. To highlight that, the director appears to have cast a real person to play himself alongside these professional actors.
The real George Lyford stepping into the fictional world of the Newmans, just like the character of George Lyford steps into their trophy house. Its casting is a thematic statement.
It really is.
But trying to figure out the exact production details behind how this happened is where our source material gets highly mysterious.
We have to look at the references section for clues. For an entire Wikipedia article, there is only one single citation provided to back up any of this information.
1. It's a footnote linked to a September 3, 2001 article from the New York Times written by Sarah Reimer. And the title of this single solitary piece of evidence is Tunbridge Journal, a Vermont town turns Schwab's lunch counter.
That title alone is a massive clue to the meta-narrative we're discussing.
Let's break that down because I feel like there's so much implied there. We know the film was released in 2003, and this article is from 2001, so it was clearly written during the production phase.
Right.
But what does the phrase turns Schwab's lunch counter imply to you about the town's involvement?
Well, Schwab's Pharmacy was famously the place in Hollywood where legend says Lana Turner was discovered sitting at the soda fountain.
Oh, right, the classic Hollywood discovery myth.
Exactly. It became cultural shorthand for ordinary people suddenly being thrust into show business. By applying that to a rural Vermont town, the title implies the whole town of Tunbridge got involved in the film.
Like they were all discovered.
It's as if the director just walked into the local diner and cast the people he found there to play themselves in his movie. It suggests the authenticity we see on screen, like George Lyford playing George Lyford, was drawn directly from the community itself.
It's like the production of the film mirrors the plot of the film. The film crew itself became a sort of nosy Parker, arriving in this rural Vermont town, assessing its residents, and pulling them into the artificial world of cinema.
That's a great way to put it.
The filmmakers intruded on the town the same way the Newmans intruded on the landscape.
Exactly. The medium becomes the message. But the tragicomedy of this Wikipedia page is that we are left wanting so much more information about how that actually played out. We have the premise, but almost no production history.
Right at the top of the article, there's this bright banner warning the reader. You know, the one that says, this article needs additional citations for verification.
A familiar sight.
And the best part? It notes that the banner has been sitting there since December 2017.
For almost a decade, this page has been sending out a digital SOS. It's begging for someone to come along and provide more context, more sources, more proof that this fascinating meta-experiment of a film actually exists the way it's described.
It's a desperate plea for help that has completely gone unanswered. It's just sitting there floating in the vast ocean of Wikipedia, waiting for a digital nosy Parker to come along and actually meddle in its affairs.
It needs a meddler.
It really does. It needs someone to dig up the old reviews, to interview the real George Lyford if he's out there, and to finally add some citations to this cinematic ghost town. Why do you think a page like this just gets abandoned?
It speaks to the nature of digital preservation. We assume everything on the internet is permanent and meticulously cataloged. But the reality is that indie projects from the early 2000s often fall through the cracks.
They just vanish.
They existed right before the explosion of social media and ubiquitous digital archiving. It adds an unintentional layer of melancholy to our whole discussion today.
It really does.
We have this rich, complex portrait of compromise and authenticity, but the historical record of it is fading. It's sustained by just a single 2001 newspaper headline and a brief plot summary.
So what does this all mean? We started today with a tiny, nearly forgotten Wikipedia page about an obscure 2003 indie movie, and we've ended up uncovering a surprisingly dense, layered narrative about human behavior.
We really have.
We've talked about the illusion of escaping your problems by simply changing your zip code and seeking out intrinsic values. We've explored the tragic absurdity of trying to save a marriage by building a trophy house instead of building a family.
A monument to avoidance.
Exactly. We've seen how the state-sanctioned Nosy Parker, the local tax assessor, can unwittingly become the catalyst that exposes the rot in a seemingly perfect suburban compromise.
The handyman who breaks the facade.
And we've marveled at a director who cast a real man to play himself, blurring the lines between the authentic world and the fictions we create. It's a potent reminder for you, the listener, that sometimes the briefest summaries contain the most densely packed human dramas if you just take the time to read between the lines.
This raises an important question, though. One that extends far beyond the rural borders of Vermont or the pixels of a forgotten Wikipedia page.
I'm listening.
When we try to patch over our own internal relationship voids by building external trophy houses, whether those are literal mansions, carefully curated social media personas, or any other superficial monuments to our success, do we inevitably invite a lister?
Wow.
Do we unconsciously invite someone or something to come along, poke around our affairs like a nosy Parker, and force us to finally assess the true cost of the facades we build?